The Maple Leafs get set for a pivotal final weekend of the NHL regular season, and we unveil our Friday five-pack of five Maple Leafs players under the most pressure heading into the playoffs. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. You have not one, but two chances to bet on the Maple Leafs this weekend. Got a back-to-back against the Montreal Canadiens and the Columbus Carolina Hurricanes, rather, this weekend. We'll tee up those games in a little bit. We got a Leafs playoff pressure list to get into, but I think we should start with some house cleaning here, Dave. Let's get it out of the way. Some news and notes from practice. So let's update the good folks on the news of the day out of Leafs land. Oliver Ekman-Larsson did not skate today and will miss tomorrow night's game against the Habs. What does this mean for the Leafs, Dave?
Well, it means that they're going to have to roll five defensemen, something this team has not done before. It's not, as I did a little research, it's happened. Teams have done it before. It's kind of the whole salary cap issue where, well, really, the Leafs can't recall somebody and they just don't have room to put anybody back down in the Marlies either. So essentially, you play with five defensemen tonight. You play shorthanded. That gives you the opportunity to recall a player on an emergency basis, which also means that player cannot have a cap hit higher than $850,000. So it looks like the two options could be Dakota Mermis or Marshall Refi, if you're looking at the two guys the Leafs can call up in this situation. So essentially, the Leafs are saying, all right, if we're gonna have to go shorthanded, let's just go shorthanded for the Saturday game. That way we can get somebody up on an emergency basis. And I believe that it happens until the team decides that they no longer need that emergency roster spot.
Yeah, exactly. Until they, have players who can come back and play. And, the Leafs now have three defensemen who are out. Jake McCabe, obviously, now Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and technically Yanni Hakanpää is a Maple Leaf. He's played a couple of games for this team. He was at practice today, funny enough. So maybe gearing up to play at some point here for Toronto. But yeah, so Oliver Ekman-Larsson won't play tomorrow against the Montreal Canadiens. And it is interesting that they decided to go with only five defensemen. But as you noted, there's just no other way around it. They can't really send anyone else down because there's no one else, I believe, that is even waiver eligible. They're going to have to lose someone off waivers if they try and send somebody down. If they wanted to try and go 11-6, possibly, that was a possibility. But with just the amount of where they're at, their contract situation, and with the cap situation, they're kind of screwed. And this is the only way to get out of it. And it just goes back to the old, question of why is the NHL like this? Why do you put the teams and the players in this position where they have to play shorthanded and exhaust the players, the defensemen, who are going to have to make up, a full player? You now have five guys to play the role of six in order to call it an emergency at that point and get someone called up. And it's so ass backwards. It's so annoying to me, Dave. But say let me, it is what it is. That's what's going to end up happening. And I'd imagine OEL, maybe we just don't see him for the next couple of games, give him the weekend off and try and rest and recover. Possibly maybe Jake McCabe is ready to go for Sunday, because when we heard from Berube at practice today, it was more so he'll be back before the regular season ends, but it won't be tomorrow. But could it be Sunday, you think, Dave?
I think they already said that McCabe's out this weekend. That wasn't even a possibility.
Oh, okay, perfect then. I saw he said he wouldn't be here tomorrow.
Yeah, I think
Montreal.
I saw Alter tweet out that McCabe is out for the weekend. So
So odds
Essentially,
are they'll have to make that emergency call up tomorrow then to get a
yeah.
player up,
I
which
think that's the point. What they're looking for.
exactly. I think that's what they want to be able to do, and especially, because we know once you get into the postseason, if you're going to make a deep run, and obviously the Maple Leafs want to, usually a team will use on average 8 or 9 defensemen.
Hmm.
So it would be very nice for the Maple Leafs if they could get a guy like Mermes or a guy like Marshall Refi, get them 1 or 2 games back up in the NHL just so that they can refresh themselves of how much of a faster pace league it is. So if they do get thrown into the mix come playoff time, it's not as long of a layoff since playing
Yeah.
NHL games as it's been, because both those guys have not been playing NHL games in quite some time. They're down in the American League. So I think it benefits them to get some guys in. But obviously, tomorrow night against a pretty good Montreal squad kind of stinks to be down a man. So that's the OEL news. Hakanpää, as we noted, at practice skating. I wonder if they end up getting him an AHL conditioning stints.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
How many more games do the Marlies have? I'm just gonna look up their
I have
schedule.
it right now. They play this. They play back to back this weekend, and they got 3 more games to end the season. So the 16th, 18th, and 19th. The Marlies actually have 1 more game over the Leafs to end their season.
Yeah. So I mean, he could easily get in 2 of those games. Let's say the 16th and 18th,
Yeah.
right? Keep Hakanpää over the weekend, I guess. Let him play here and skate with the team, practice with the team, and then perhaps maybe even tomorrow. I guess you could loan him out against the Monsters. It is a game in Toronto, so that might make some sense actually. Where the rest
Yeah.
of the team they go from Toronto to Carolina. Keep Hakanpää back. Let him play that Sunday game against the Monsters, Cleveland Monsters in Toronto for the Marlies, and maybe a couple more games to end off the year. That could be what they decide to do with him. I'll be curious to see if that's what ends up happening. But yeah, so that's kind of the gist of what happened at practice today. Anything else that kind of piqued your interest at practice?
Not really. I was thinking throughout all this if we potentially see a Ford get a couple of shifts on the blue line, like that one time in the preseason where they lost a defenseman and like, all right, Mitch, you're gonna go play some D. All right, Callie, you're
I
gonna
was
go
gonna
play
say, I
some
was
D.
like, did I dream Callie Ehrencroft got some
Yeah, I know
shifts
he
on
did too.
defense? I want like that doesn't seem like a Berube thing though. Like I could understand if Sheldon Keefe was still the head coach of this team because he was willing to try things like that. Berube, I don't know. I think he still believes that those 5 defensemen, just getting those guys an extra shift every now and then, probably would work better
Hey man,
than
Chief even
throwing
offered to
out
go in
Yarncroc.
himself. I don't know if you saw that. He said,
I did see that. He'll suit up. I mean, hey, I wouldn't want to mess with Chief going into a corner. That's for sure.
"Nope."
Chief battling in front of a net. I mean, dude, that guy will cross check you and break your back. That guy was an absolute unit when he played Coach Berube. So, hey, maybe, possibly, that'd be kind of funny to get him out there chopping dudes. All right, why don't we take a break? We'll come back. Let's tee up the weekend back to back. Montreal tomorrow, Carolina on Sunday. It is a big weekend because with 4 points, a sweep of the back to back, Toronto could all but lock up the division. So we'll tee those games up, and I've got my pressure list. Top 5 Leafs facing the most pressure heading into the playoffs. That's all coming up next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NHL playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into the player props from goal scorers to block shots to saves. FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game faces off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to fanduel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Welcome back into the Locked On at Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you on the show. It is free and available wherever you get a podcast every weekday, Monday through Friday. You can find us on YouTube as well. All right, Dave, big back-to-back this weekend, the final back-to-back of the season, and it's kind of cruel for the NHL schedule makers to toss in a back-to-back on the final weekend of the season, but here it is, and it's quite a difficult one. You're at home taking on a red-hot Montreal Canadiens team, and then you've got to do some cross-border travel overnight to Carolina to take on a pretty good Carolina Hurricane squad. This is a big weekend for the Buds.
Yeah, especially if you want to try to clinch the division, right? Because a loss here or there can make things a little bit interesting for that number one seed in the Atlantic. So I think that's why this whole playing with 5D, not the best time for this to come about.
No.
But I mean, it happens, stuff happens. But yeah, I think it's a good test though. Like I know Carolina doesn't really have much to play for, but Montreal certainly does.
Oh,
We know them.
absolutely.
Well, first off, we know Montreal. Anytime these guys play against the Leafs, it's like their Stanley Cup. So you always expect kind of their best effort. But um, you know, there's kind of a thing where you get these sort of games to kind of test to see how you are against kind of the more desperate clubs. And Carolina, that's a team that always give the Leafs fit, especially in Carolina. So I'm
Yeah.
curious to see how that one goes.
I am as well. And I don't believe we're going to see Ivan Demidov tomorrow night,
No.
correct? The big time prospect for the Montreal Canadiens signed from Russia a couple of days ago. He was with SKA St. Petersburg, and it was kind of a shock to everyone that he ended up signing so soon in his draft year and is now joining the Montreal Canadiens for their playoff run. He did land in Toronto yesterday, I want to say. So I got a big hero's welcome. A lot of Habs fans were at Pearson waiting for him and gave him a nice welcoming. But I don't believe he's going to be eligible to play in this game Saturday, correct?
Yeah, so he's in Toronto, but the thing is he needs to get his visa sorted out before he can even play. So they're saying like by the time that all gets sorted out, Monday would be the more likely event of him playing. And Montreal's not even in Toronto right now; they're in Ottawa. So,
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
the fact that he skipped Ottawa to go to Toronto, some were saying that maybe that's kind of where he has to go and get all that visa stuff done.
Well, it is, and I mean, I think that's probably. I don't even think you can get to Russia or to Montreal from Russia. Like, I think that's the only
Yeah,
the closest international
international hub.
airport that he can get
Yeah.
to, anyways. But yeah, plus, yeah, like the Russian consulate would make it easier to do things in person. That would make some sense. But that is one thing to keep a note, though. The Canadiens will be on night 2 of a back-to-back tomorrow, so Toronto's got to make sure they take advantage of a tired Montreal squad because the Senators, that's a pesky bunch, and they're obviously still chasing down Florida, so they're going to be giving it their all, trying to keep piling up the points. So they're going to give Montreal quite the run for their money tonight. So Toronto, they'll be getting a pretty beat up Montreal squad, I would think, Saturday night. So hopefully they can take advantage. That's going to be crucial and important because, I mean, I think if you look at this weekend, if you're Toronto, you would love 4 points, obviously. 3 points would be great, but you got to at minimum get a split here and pick up at least one win, and that would pretty well give you a solid chance to win the division if you can get at least one win over this weekend.
Yeah, and especially when you're playing a back-to-back, the first game is the crucial one because usually the second half you don't really have your legs, and when you have 5 defensemen playing, like you gotta find a way to get some goals in early. And like I'm curious who will pick up the majority of the ice. Like I think first off, Philip Myers, he ain't playing like 8 minutes like he did the other night in Tampa. This guy's gonna have to play a good chunk of minutes, but this is just one of those things where you got to make it as easy on yourself as you can, right? Try to not let the game go to overtime. Try to keep this within regulation, and I mean Montreal would like the win regardless of how they do it. But if you're the Leafs, you gotta make sure that you're you're thinking a little bit about the fact that you are playing shorthand. You don't want to make it as tough as it already is going to be on you.
Absolutely. So, big weekend coming up for the Toronto Maple Leafs. All right, let's take a break, Dave. We'll come back. I've got a 5-pack of the 5 Maple Leafs players facing the most pressure heading into the 2024-25 playoffs. And we'll unveil that next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like the energy of a live event, whether it's catching a last-minute MLB showdown or soaking in the excitement of an NHL matchup, but finding great seats at a great price. That used to be a challenge until I found Game Time. Game Time makes scoring last-minute tickets easier than ever. Prices actually drop as the event gets closer. And with their all-in pricing, you see the total cost up front, no surprise fees at checkout. Here's why I love using Game Time. They've got their last-minute deals, which you can save up to 60% off buying last minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater events. You can grab last minute seats for any Leafs game with save big with their zone deals. And with seat views, before you buy, no surprise fees and the lowest price guarantee, you can book with total confidence. And their lowest price guarantee means that you never have to worry about overpaying for your tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as always, and we are geared up for the final push to the postseason. 4 more games for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Got a back-to-back this weekend, Montreal, then traveling over to Carolina. They finished things off with a trip to Buffalo, and then they're at home finishing off the season against the Detroit Red Wings. So that's the final 4 games for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and then it's go time after that. And obviously, you want the Leafs to take care of business over these next 4 games, give themselves the best chance at succeeding, and that would mean finishing atop of the Atlantic Division to get that done. So hopefully that could happen. But either way, Dave, I mean, there's going to be a lot of pressure, regardless if they finish first, second, I guess third is still technically a possibility. There's going to be pressure on this Maple Leafs team, as there always is, right?
There is, like, every year you kind of hear the same old thing, and I played ball hockey last night and talking with some of the guys there. So some of them are just like, there's a pessimism right around the team. We're probably gonna be more of the same. They need to do this, they need to do that. We don't want to play this team. They should want to play this team. It always just comes down to can the Stars handle the pressure and play to their potential, right? That's really all it comes down to in a lot of ways for this team. But yeah, like the pressure with all the changes that have been made with the last couple of years, I think the pressure goes a lot more on the players than it probably ever has been.
100%, 100%, because I think when you look at it over the years, there's a lot of pressure on Dubas, there's a lot of pressure on Sheldon Keefe, because it was kind of their team, right? Like they had their fingerprints all over the team, and it was failure after failure after failure, and they just didn't find success. And eventually it cost both of those guys their jobs, the failures of the postseason. The regular season was great for those guys, 100-point seasons. They had guys winning Rockets, MVPs. It was fantastic. They were rock stars. Come postseason, team was unable to get it done, and it cost those 2 gentlemen their jobs. Kyle Dubas, by the way, named general manager for Team Canada at the World Championships because he is not going to be in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Sorry, had to throw a little dig in there. But anyways, yeah, for sure, I'm with you. I think the players definitely this year more than ever. It seems like it's really on them to get it done now. They've been given so much, and I think they're in maybe their best position to succeed this year than they've ever been. With that, I've got my Friday 5-pack, and I have my 5 players facing the most pressure in the 2024-25 playoffs, Dave. We'll start at number 5 and go all the way down to number 1. So coming in at number 5, I have Morgan Rielly. I think there's obviously going to be a lot of pressure on Morgan Rielly. He's been here through it all. He's the longest tenure Maple Leaf. He's making a lot of money, and they went out and they spent a pretty hefty price, a first round pick and Fraser Minton, to get him a partner that can allow him to excel and succeed and be a top pair, if not top 4 defenseman at the very least, that can produce in the playoffs. And we've seen when Morgan Rielly is at his best, that series against Tampa Bay, probably the best he's ever played in his career, I would say, how much better this Maple Leafs team ends up being. So for me, I really, really think that Morgan Rielly, there's going to be a lot of pressure on this guy to succeed. Comes at number 5 for me.
Yeah, I probably would have had him a little bit higher just because he's been under pressure kind of all season, and he hasn't handled it very well. At the same time, I always say that the playoffs gives a good kind of chance for reset, but the one thing Morgan Rielly has to his advantage, right, when we're talking about, what does the pressure really mean? Well, his contract comes with a no move clause. So it's not like, if he has a bad playoff, they're going to look to say, okay, what do we do to get, to move on from Morgan Rielly? It will be his, everything would be in his hands in that regard. So I think that's where maybe the pressure isn't, as strong as maybe some of the other players will be, that'll be on your list. But I do think, I think out of all the defensemen, all the guys that have been a part of the core, the pressure's pretty high on him, considering, he's always been viewed as the leader. And this year he has taken a lot more heat than I've seen in his time in Toronto.
He certainly has. Now, he's played better since Brandon Carlo has come over. A couple games here and there where he's been exposed, and there's been some lapse defensively. But overall, the numbers have been much better. So hopefully that can continue into the postseason for the Maple Leafs. Okay, coming in at number 4 on my top 5 pressure list are the goaltenders. And I can't just pick one because I think there's a good chance we see both of these guys play. I think that's why there's a lot of pressure on them because, well, for one, Joseph Woll, there's pressure on him because this is a guy who last year played really well when he got the opportunity, when he took over for Samsonov, but then was unable to play in Game 7 last year with the series on the line. There's going to be pressure on him not only to play well, but to stay healthy and give this team a chance to win. So that's why there's going to be pressure on Joseph Woll. And then for Anthony Stolarz, the pressure comes solely because he's never played in the postseason. He doesn't have that playoff success. He sat on the bench. He's watched Bobrovsky go deep into a playoff series, but he's never actually gone out there and got the start and played the full 60 minutes himself. So that's where I think the pressure comes in for him is you've had a great regular season. Everyone, you have far exceeded your expectations this season. But can you parlay that into playoff success, right? So many times have we seen players on the Toronto Maple Leafs have great regular seasons and fade in the playoffs. This can't happen to Anthony Stolarz. And that's why I think the goaltenders combined, to me, are number 4 on the pressure list. And also, just flat out, if you don't have good goaltending in the playoffs, you're sunk. So they just have to play well, and they've got to compete because whoever you're going to play, whether it's Ottawa, whether it's Tampa, whether it's Florida in round 1, you're going to be second when it comes to goaltending between the two teams. Ullmark is a better goaltender than those two. He's been able to prove that. He's a Vezina winner. Same with Hellebuck and obviously Bobrovsky. So the only ones in the Atlantic who don't have Vezinas on their resume or playoff success on their resume is the one, the only, well, the twos, the onlys, Stolarz and Joseph Woll. So that's why I have them at number 4.
Yeah, I mean, the pressures that as you kind of outlined there. And on top of that, like you also have to think about just the uncertainty of they've had some good performances. Stolarz has been on a pretty good roll since he's come back from his injury, but you when the pressure is up there, and as you said, when the other team has the more experienced and noteworthy goaltender, it's just like it reminds me a lot about Samsonov, guys like Samsonov and Campbell, right? Where they did decent, but when the pressure of knowing that the guy on the other side is most likely going to be at his top caliber, the little itty bit mistakes can really come back to bite you. You don't get those second, third opportunities. He would like to have that goal back. Well, probably wouldn't want to be giving up those goals in the first place. We saw it, consistently enough over the last few playoffs that what has really set this team apart in a lot of ways is they've ran into some really good goaltenders. Whether Swayman, Vasilevsky, Carey Price, Tuukka Rask, Bobrovsky, like every single goaltender has looked amazing. It's because they are. And that's where goaltenders, having that elite top goaltender, plays a big mark in these playoffs.
Yeah. So the goalie's going to be lots of pressure on them. Coming in at number 3, and I think you'll understand why Morgan Rielly was low on this list to this point. Because for me, coming at number 3, I mean, how much pressure is going to be on Scott Laughton to perform in the postseason here? Like, it has not been rosy since he came here. People already thought that paying a first-round pick for Scott Laughton was too much, and the fact that he is yet to score, he's yet to really produce a whole lot, he's been on the ice for a lot of goals, it has not gone well at all to this point. But he was brought in to make a playoff impact. That's what he was brought in to do because his game is conducive to what wins in the postseason. So this could all be forgotten. Right? The struggles, the last month since he's gotten here, since the trade deadline, can all be forgotten with a great playoffs. And like you said, in the postseason, everything's wiped clean. Slate clean. No one cares that you were a -7 in, your 15 games with the Maple Leafs. No one cares. It's 0. Everything's zeros across the board. Go out there and put on the performance that really the Leafs figured you would, that Brad Treliving knows you can, and I think that it'll go a long way. But if he doesn't perform well, and it's just a continuation of what we've seen the last month, and he's fishing pucks out of the net, and he's not really helping out on the penalty kill, dude, it's gonna get real noisy for Scott Laughton. I think there's a lot of pressure on him, considering the price the Leafs paid at the deadline to get him. I think there's a lot of pressure on Laughton to succeed.
Yeah, and just hearing, I just remember when John Tortorella talked about the Laughton trade, and he's like, well, you have to kind of understand this is somebody who's in a totally different situation. Yes, the pressure of already being a top target of a trade, there's comes the pressure of performing in that regard. There's also the pressure of just being in a totally new situation. You've only been with one team throughout your whole career. So there's already a bit of a shock to the system there. I think it's not just Scott Laughton though. It's also Craig Berube's he's gotta trust Scott Laughton to try to get his game back too, right? He can't be, ready to throw the guy on the fourth line. I understand that if he's not being responsible, you have to kind of send a little bit of a message, but I think you got to give him you got to help his confidence. You got to make sure you're not telling him off. If you make one mistake, you're throwing him on the fourth line, because I don't think that's the solution either.
Yeah.
So
and he did practice on the fourth line today and is expected to be 4C against Montreal tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think hopefully he can play center. Like that's they need him to play center, I think. Like when I look up the upcoming matchups. But there's in a lot of ways, yes, Laughton, there's a lot of pressure on, but there are guys who aren't also performing that seem to be getting a lot more rope in a lot of ways. So I think I can understand the pressure. I can understand the frustration because of what was paid for him.
Well, I think that's what it is. It's like guys who haven't performed, like throw out a couple of names, for example.
Like I'll throw Calle Yarncroc. Since he's come back, he's had one goal, right? I understand he's really good defensively, but you need him to be a secondary scorer.
Yeah.
I look at Nick Robertson. He had that 2-goal game, but it's what he does outside of the scoring, right? What else is he giving you in that regard, right?
Yep. And those are fair. Those are
Yeah.
fair. And absolutely those guys have to step up and they're going to be asked to do that when given that opportunity in the postseason. But I just go back to the fact that
Yeah.
Scott Laughton cost you a first round pick and a top 5 prospect in Nikita Grabankin. That's not what you paid for Robertson and for Yarncroc, right? I think that's why there's pressure because you'll always look back. I mean, how often do we talk about how the Nick Foligno trade was a waste, right? All the
Yeah.
time. Leafs fans bring up that Nick Foligno trade. I think if Laughton does not turn out to be the third line center or at least bottom 6 contributor that you would expect out of someone you give up a first round pick for, boy, it's going to be loud. And he's here next season too. So yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot of pressure on him, but to your point, there's going to be pressure on a lot of people. All right, quickly, let's run through the final 2 here, and it shouldn't be a surprise who the final 2 are. But coming at number 2 on this list, I got the captain, Auston Matthews. One, he's the captain. So obviously there's going to be pressure on this guy. He's going to have to be the catalyst most nights, put the team on his back, and he's going to have to, do some damage here in the postseason. It's been a bit of a quiet regular season for him, injuries, inconsistencies. But come the playoffs, he needs to succeed, and he needs to be the guy. He has to go Super Saiyan mode and bring this team to the promised land and be the best player in this series because he is the best player in this series. Go out there and prove it here in the postseason. So there's going to be, to me, a lot of pressure on Matthews. He comes in at number 2 on my list.
This is supposed to be the big change from the summer, right? Tavares passing the torch off. And we need to see him take his game to the next level. I understand that there's been the injury concerns all year, and he hasn't really been, he hasn't been his self in a lot of ways. But playoffs, this is what you get paid for. This is what the Leafs are paying him the big bucks for. And, I think they're like the whole idea of putting the C on him was supposed to add that, I wouldn't say pressure, but that responsibility to say that this is now your team.
Yeah.
You gotta be the one to set the tone. And that's what he's got to do. And if he doesn't set the tone, usually the captain is the first one to hear it. He's not just the highest paid player anymore. He's also the captain. So
yes,
he can't hide behind other players now.
No. And coming in at number 1 is Mitch Marner, who, he's not the captain, but he does. I think his future in Toronto really is linked to his postseason performance this year. Like if it doesn't go well again for Mitch Marner in the playoffs, and he's been known to fade away in those must-win games, Mitch Marner known to fade away here in the postseason. If it doesn't go well, he may not be a Maple Leaf any longer. So I don't know how much more pressure packed that could be, where your future in the only place you've ever known, kid from Toronto, drafted in Toronto, played for the Maple Leafs, has been a superstar, has played here for 9 years, and his future is now linked to what he does in this playoffs. I mean, that's why he's number 1 on my list.
Well, yeah, he's had the most to play for all year. He's been the subject of a lot of discussion. And frankly, he's had a lot of I'd say the blame and how the playoffs have gone, right? Because everyone talks about, when the Leafs are eliminated, who are the guys that get the finger pointed to, and he is one of them. So you want to get paid. You want to get paid more than a Rantanen, get paid like a Matthews and like those top echelon players. Well, the playoffs is where you're going to have to show it. That's where top players usually make their money. I look at guys like Draisaitl and McDavid. They lead the charge every year. You know that they're going to be the best players on the ice. Is Marner? That's like there's pressure on him to do it, and it's fair because he's taken on that mantle of leaving this whole decision about his future to come at the end of the year. Well, there aren't many games left, and he's going to have to show that all this endless talk about his contract for himself will be worth it if he puts on a good postseason performance.
Yep, exactly. And last year he had just 3 points, 1 goal through 7 games against the Boston Bruins, and it was not good enough, and it was very, very loud. He does the same thing. The Leafs aren't bringing him back. They're not. He puts out another 3-point performance in a 7-game series in which the Leafs lose, and it's another first-round exit. Mitch Marner will not return to the Maple Leafs next season. And for that, I mean, I couldn't imagine how much pressure it must be. Hopefully he can block it.
Yeah, I mean, no, but I think you're right. It's everyone I've talked to said like it's almost tough. Like there's a lot of people who feel like it's.
I mean,
yeah, I don't know if it's like a foregone conclusion he's back, but you know, he's gotta understand that a lackluster playoffs from him, and then him trying to get the bank from the Leafs. It's kind of a tough sell in a lot of ways, not just to the people making the decisions, but to the fans who, yes, have been very critical of him. But in a lot of ways, I can understand why the fans have felt the way they felt.
Absolutely. So Mitch Marner comes in at number 1, Austin Matthews number 2, Scott Lawton at number 3. I got the goaltenders at number 4, and Morgan Rielly comes in at number 5 in my Friday 5-pack. The 5 players with the most pressure going into the 2024-25 playoffs. We are less than a week away from the conclusion of the regular season, and next weekend, the playoffs begin. And that pressure starts to mount. So can't wait for it. Still 4 more games to go, though. I'm going to get back-to-back this weekend against Montreal at home tomorrow and then in Carolina on Sunday. That'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_ Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys on Monday. Enjoy the games this weekend. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.